So I was down in Florida doing some research on one of the greatest monopolies of our time. And while I was doing some research on the monopoly, I came across another subject on which I did some research on, personal research while I was walking around at the parks. And what that research concluded was that there's a new minority in town. I'm not talking about black people. I'm not talking about Mexicans. I'm not talking about any other foreigner. I'm talking about white people. That's right. The whole time I was there, it was probably about 50% Spanish, Mexican, whatever you want to call it, 20% black, 10% white, and probably about 20% other foreign people. Now, before I get into the rest of this video, I just want to get a disclaimer out here. I have no care in the world what your background is, what your skin color is. You can be my best bud. I love you either way. But we're just purely looking at statistics here and the trends that are happening, especially closer to the border. Now, with this being said, the whole time I was walking around at these parks, English conversation was at an incredibly all-time low. I probably heard 2 to 3 times more foreign language than I actually heard English conversations. And the English conversation was incredibly rare. You would have to actually go there and experience yourself to actually take in how little English was actually being spoken. Again, I have no care in the world what you choose to speak in your free time, but these people that weren't speaking English, it wasn't like they were just choosing to speak another foreign language. They just didn't know English. Anytime you would get on any type of ride or whatnot with multiple people, there would always be 2 to 5 individuals that had no clue what the instructions were and were not following instructions, and obviously they didn't even speak English. So like the person would say, put on your seatbelt. Well, when you don't speak English, it's very hard to put on your seatbelt. And then after you put on your seatbelt, you got to tug on a little bit, tug on the yellow strap. I'm like, well, if you don't speak English, what are we doing? I mean, to be a functional member of society, you have to speak the native language. Now, again, this goes for Americans going to other people. I'm not just sitting here saying that if you're going to come to America, you got to learn our language. Really, if you're going anywhere to be a functional member of society, you got to speak English in the first place. And not to mention, I'm not going to sit here and tell you how to raise your child and stuff like that. But if you don't speak English, especially nowadays, you can take these standardized tests and different language and the stuff, but you're pitting your child at a severe disadvantage if you don't speak English and speak English often. If you speak a foreign language at your house, and that's what they're getting used to, especially at a younger age, and the only time they're actually exposed to English is when they go to school, well, your child has at a severe disadvantage in vocabulary and just verbal development in general on English, which is one of the main languages of the world. This is how it is for colonization and stuff. It is one of the main lingua francas and one of the main business languages that we use in the world today. So with that being said, not only were there very little English spoken, but what I actually did came to realize was that you would often recognize that there were some people that obviously had not English as a first language, and these people were incredibly polite, all the time, polite, just some were more polite than me. Like one time it was raining and I didn't realize there was space all the way back there. It was like, very bad English, obviously, but they still spoke English, they were still trying. It was like, could you circle around so more people can get in the shelter? I was like, oh yeah, of course, man. I didn't even realize that there was space back here. But, the people that didn't speak English, incredibly rude. I think that just kind of shows, like, if you're going to go to a country and you don't speak their language, that kind of just a symbol of you you just don't care. I don't care about that country. I don't care about the people. And I'm just extremely disrespectful. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I hate these people because of their skin color. No, I'm just, it's a pattern. I'm not saying I'm not being racist or anything. Just the people that didn't speak English more generally were more rude. Some examples. They could not watch their kids. Multiple instances, people that did not speak English, kids were just wandering off. Like one time I was in a park and the family was all the way down here and there was just this random little kid just walking around, and this park member picked him up and took him over to a little group or whatever, and then eventually these family comes strolling back around, didn't even recognize the kid. Like, was this my kid? Like, it was just kind of strange, and obviously there was no interaction at all because they didn't speak English. Another instance, kind of eating, you can't really pack food and carry on a lunchbox all day, so, obviously you got to go to a restaurant and stuff like that, eat the junk food there, but, they aren't watching their kids. They're just letting the kids spray sunscreen incredibly close to other people, practically spraying sunscreen in people's food. It's just incredibly disrespectful all the way around. So with that being said, does this really matter? Yes, it does matter, because to be a functional member of society, you have to speak their native language. Now, what is this? Obviously, this is no thanks to Joe Biden's infamous, border security, where he just let hundreds and thousands of illegal immigrants come into the country undocumented. That's what illegal means. And, I'm not going to sit here and say that illegal immigrants are bad. Obviously, you need illegal immigrants. Even one of the greatest presidents of our time, Bill Clinton, I have him very high on my presidential ranking list. You should go check that out. Shameless plug, by the way. But anyways, even he allowed illegal immigrants, illegal immigrants, it's just one of those things. Like, you could bring them in, and it kind of fluctuates your economy to a point where you can use non-essential hard work labor, and you can pay them dirt cheap because they're legal immigrants, and you just pay them under the table. So yeah, it kind of stabilizes some of the labor costs and stuff like that. But when you get to that point, to the point where it is now, where you have all this criminal rates rising and stuff like this, where all these guys are terrorists and stuff like that coming in through the border, that's bad. We don't want that stuff. And am I going to sit here and say that deportation is the right answer? I would say if you commit a crime and you're a legal immigrant, yeah, you should probably be deported. I would say that's very, very correct, very right thing to do. Every other country does it. Why shouldn't America do it? I would say that's the right thing. Now, should you go around, and if they don't have their green card or whatever, should you go knocking on people's doors to deport them? I'm not going to sit here and tell you whether that's right or wrong, but what I will say is I don't think we should tailor so much to the illegal immigrants, especially if they don't speak English. You're going to have to learn how to speak English if you come to a country, or any country. You have to learn how to speak their native language. So I think you should obviously make it harder than what it already is. I've gone over things like this, Springfield and stuff like that, giving the legal immigrants housing. I don't think you should do that. It's just there's so many of them. You have people here. I'm not saying you should give homeless people housing and stuff like that, but the money's better spent other places. There's just too many illegal immigrants, too many housing stuff and stuff like that. It's too complicated. Okay, you shouldn't be specializing to them in their own language. Make them speak English. That's just pretty as basic as it is. Shouldn't be giving them money. It's just basically just let them kind of adapt into the culture, and not make the culture adapt around them. They're immigrants in our country. I'm not gonna sit here and say I don't hate immigrants. I mean, even in the Bible, don't be harsh to immigrants because you were an immigrant in my land. Immigrants, you want to come to the country, you're going to be an American no matter what race you are. So, with this being said, what was the moral of the story? The moral of the story is that there's changing times, and people that don't speak English, or people that don't speak any language that's native to a country, will want to come to a country. Why? Because it's the greatest country on earth. Why wouldn't you? And do I blame them? No, not really, because I know that Mexico is not as great as the USA. But if you're going to come to a country, you got to speak its native language. You got to be a productive member of society. And you can't be having all this stuff, you can't be rude. You can't not be watching your children. You can't not be leaving your children to wander off, speaking on speakerphone at extraordinarily loud tones, cutting people in line and all this stuff. If you don't speak English, if you don't speak the native language, you got to learn it. You have to make some attempt to learn it, because at the end of the day, you got to adapt to their culture. The culture doesn't have to adapt to you. Assimilation, the whole thing. Assimilation is bad. It's their culture. The culture exists for a reason. It's not adapting to the new immigrants. You gotta adapt into that culture. With that being said, I hope this video didn't offend anybody too terribly amount. But yes, I do believe the new minority, especially near the border, is white people. With that being said, stay safe and stay hydrated.